In case you didn't know, Sergio Perez will be leaving Racing Point at the end of this season. After 10 years in F1, this could be the last we see of Sergio Perez. However, currently he is fighting for survival and doing all he can to get another spot on the grid in 2021. Let's look back at this season as well as the spectacular Turkish Grand Prix, and let's see if he is worthy or not.
Jungle.
Now before we get started, I would like to thank you all for watching my most recent video and also to congratulate Lewis Hamilton on his 7th world title. If you want to see a video I made on Lewis Hamilton last year, check out the card in the top right corner of your screen. For this video I'm going to look back at every race that Perez has competed in, compare him to his teammate Lance Stroll, and decide whether or not he is worthy of another seat in 2021. So sit back, relax, if you like it remember to subscribe, and leave a comment on your opinions at the end of the video. Now let's get started. When the season opened in Austria, Perez put his RP20 or pink W10 onto the third row of the grid in 6th place. This was very impressive considering he matched the lap time of Red Bull's Alex Albon, and it was very strong compared to Lance Stroll who started in P9. In the rather chaotic race, Perez was running as high as 3rd, but a 5-second time penalty demoted him down to 6th. Not great, no terrible, but unlike his teammate Stroll, Perez actually finished the race. Sorry to interrupt you guys, but I'm just here to remind you that 96.5% of you all aren't subscribed. So why don't you be different and go and subscribe to my channel. Anyway. Here Perez wasn't on top form, with the rain pouring down during qualifying and an error caused by Antonio Giovinazzi caused the session to be red flagged. With 13 seconds remaining, Perez didn't have time to finish his flying lap and as a result he was knocked out of Q1. In the race however, Perez made his way into the points by lap 14, and he continued to progress further up the field, eventually battling for 4th, but an entanglement with Alex Albon damaged his front wing, and a brave overtake by Lando Norris on the final lap demoted him down to 6th. In qualifying, Perez improved even more and ended up in P4 on the grid. Annoyingly, this was right behind his teammate Lance Stroll. In the race, the grid did shake up a lot more, but to be fair, this Hungarian race was a bit bland, so I don't blame anyone for not remembering it. Despite this, Perez ended up finishing in 7th place, while his teammate finished 4th. Despite this, Perez was still 4 points clear of Stroll going into Britain. However, an external matter would come into effect. A few days before the British Grand Prix, Perez withdrew from the event after testing positive with you-know-what, and so he missed both races at Silverstone. He was replaced by Nico Hülkenberg, who didn't start the first race and finished 7th in the second. Lance Stroll, however, was able to clean up 10 more points between the races. In Spain, Perez was back and he showed Stroll up by qualifying P4, just ahead of him. Now in the race, we were treated to yet another Motorfest. However, this was an insult to injury, considering Stroll and Perez pretty much swapped places, and he ended up finishing P5. In the end, Perez was 8 points behind Stroll going into Belgium. In Belgium, we saw Perez qualify P8, meanwhile Stroll qualified right behind him in P9. The race had its fair share of swapping, but at the end of it, Stroll finished ahead of Perez yet again by a single position. However, they were scrapping for P9 and P10, so Stroll gained a 1 point advantage over him in the championship. In qualifying, despite the Ferrari cars being terrible, Perez gave us a glimmer of closure by qualifying P4, just behind Carlos Sainz. Meanwhile, Stroll could only afford to get P8. In the rather chaotic race, Perez only fell down the order due to a safety car in the red flag session. However, his teammate Lance Stroll benefited from this shake-up big time, and was in with a chance of winning, but he only managed 3rd. But regardless, he finished on the goddamn podium. At this point, Stroll is a massive 23 points ahead of Perez in the standings, which just goes to show Lance's form around this time. So it was a shocking but expected surprise that Racing Point decided that Perez would be replaced by Sebastian Vettel, despite Perez not only having a contract until 2022, but also helping to save the team when it went under in 2018. Despite this, Perez put his head down and never gave up. At the Tuscan Grand Prix, Perez showed his worth and qualified 6th, out-qualifying Stroll once again. A chaotic race shortly followed, with many crashes and with many cars out of the running. Perez and Stroll carried on, with Stroll eventually climbing up to 3rd, where he was driving very comfortably until his tyres realised what car it was part of, and it lost the will to live. With Stroll out of the race, Perez managed to climb the car all the way up to P5, just behind Daniel Ricciardo and podium debutant Alex Albon. It was Russia when we saw the turning point of the battle between Perez and Stroll. Lance Stroll went back to his former self and ended up qualifying in 13th. Meanwhile, Perez managed to qualify P4 and he held on to 4th position for the whole race. Meanwhile, Lance Stroll showed everyone what he was really made of and got himself in a collision with Charles Leclerc, putting himself out of the race and leaving Leclerc's car surprisingly undamaged. At the Eiffel Grand Prix, Lance Stroll had to sit the race out due to having you-know-what. Meanwhile, Perez had a mediocre Saturday, and he ended up only qualifying P9. And in a rather drama-filled race, Perez managed to get P4 yet again. This string of good results from Perez and absolute wretched misfortunes coming from Stroll resulted in Perez gaining an 11-point advantage in the standings.
What was that?
What? What happened?
Well, something just flashed up there.
Really? Are you sure?
Let me rewind.
In Portugal, Stroll and Perez were back at it again. Stroll couldn't really get his car properly down during qualifying and only ended up in P12. It also didn't help that on Friday he had a collision with Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, Perez qualified in P5 just behind Charles Leclerc. In the race, Perez dropped down to finish 7th place, but not without a first lap incident with Max Verstappen, which forced him spinning and nearly hitting the wall. So his recovery drive was very well respected. Meanwhile, Stroll got himself in another incident similar to the one he had with Verstappen, but this time it was with Lando Norris. Stroll eventually retired from the race with collision damage. In Imola, neither racing points were on top form. Perez only managed to qualify 11th, but Lance Stroll managed to qualify 15th. Lance only managed to make up 2 different places, which wasn't his best performance, while Perez managed to finish 6th. However, it was a bad strategy call during a safety car session which lost Perez a podium. It was a real shame because everyone would have liked to see Checo on the podium once again. Now in Turkey, a slippery circuit and miserable weather shook up the qualifying session big time. Neither Ferraris nor McLarens made it into Q3, and to make matters worse, Lance Stroll managed to qualify on pole. Perez nearly got pole but only managed P3. At the race start, Perez managed to jump Verstappen, but Stroll ran away with it, and it wasn't until around the halfway point of the session where his team told him to put on a fresh set of inters. As a result, Stroll was passed out by Hamilton and Perez, and with a damaged front wing, Stroll ended up falling back all the way down to P9, scoring his first points since his podium in Monza. Meanwhile, Perez held on to P2 despite a late challenge from Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel, making this his first podium of the season. As it now stands, Perez is a mind-blowing 41 points ahead of Stroll in the standings. While Lance Stroll went 5 races without a point, Perez kept racking them up, and he is now sitting 4th in the driver's standings, while Lance is 11th. To me, it's clear that Perez is driving at his very best, and even with the odds against him, he is still fighting for a seat next year. With Alex Albon underperforming as usual, it seems as clear as day for Red Bull to have a gander, maybe even invest in him in 2021. With good financial backing and strong racecraft, Perez could definitely see himself in the Red Bull seat. However, if that fails, then a seat at Haas would definitely be a viable option. Even if it means he slumps down a grid a little bit, Perez could turn a team into a project with a big investment, and turn a team into a strong force in the coming years. And with Günther Steiner saying that he won't invest in 2 rookies, it seems viable that Perez and hopefully Mick Schumacher could become a pairing in 2021. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to subscribe, like and share this video, and I hope to see you all soon.
No.